So, for everyone out there, hello. My name is Matthew Volm, CEO and co-founder of RevOps Co-op. We have a global community of 10,000 plus folks in revenue operations who are all very passionate about RevOps, and we got a couple of them on the panel today. And specifically today, we are going to be talking about how to kind of break through silos and really build collaboration. So the good old topic of silo busting, which I think we've all heard a lot about. But if you're anything like me, kind of your mind immediately goes to the like, how do you do that? Like, what does that exactly mean? Like, sure, that sounds great. But how do you break down those barriers? How do you collaborate? How do you kind of bust those silos, if you will? And that's what we're going to be talking all about today. And so I want to go around the horn and do quick introductions of our panelists, even though a lot of them don't need any sort of introduction. And so I'm going to start with Molly Bodensteiner, who is a fellow Midwesterner, as we talked about before, and currently runs revenue operations over at Sound. Molly, outside of kind of professional RevOps world, I always ask our panelists one interesting kind of fun personal fact that you can share with the crew. You can get as crazy or as not crazy as you want. So tell us one little non-RevOps related fact about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say I am a Big Brother super fan. I think that's what we call ourselves. And I have never missed an episode across 25 seasons, which is kind of crazy. I've been watching since I was 8, but it's Big Brother season right now. So get to enjoy that 3 times a week.
That's wild. Yeah, I feel like I remember when that show first came out, and it's terrifying that it's now 25 years old. That's wild. All right, Big Brother super fan over there with Molly. Now, actually, that one follow-up question: have you ever applied, or maybe how many times have you applied to be on the show?
So I'm pretty sure I have a red flag on my file. I did audition 2 weeks after I had my son, and I think they looked at me like I was crazy that I would go on a reality TV show after having a kid, but I would have if I had the opportunity.
Yep, nice. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Molly, for being here. In addition to that, we have Andy Mowat, who is the founder of Gated and has also led RevOps at a variety of kind of unicorns out there, Culture Amp, Box, and others. And so, Andy, I guess, I'll pose the same question to you, my friend. What do you got for us, that you can tell us about Andy that's not RevOps related?
Well, Molly kind of started it, but Survivor. I've never missed an episode, so yes. And I have never applied just because I haven't been able to carve out that 30 days. But I will at some point. I'll be the old dude on the island, I think.
Yep. All right, we got a reality TV theme going here, which means I'm going to be very curious, Ito, to see what you say. I see the wheels turning now. I'm like, oh man, do I need to change what I already had in my mind, or do I roll with what I got? So yes, that leaves kind of our third panelist. Ito is the CEO and co-founder of Sweep. Sweep is a formal RevOps co-op partner, have an amazing and incredible product that helps folks on the Salesforce CRM admin side, and Ito can tell you a lot more about that. But Ito, give us the lowdown on you, my friend. What can we know about you that is not kind of RevOps or Sweep related?
So I want to tell that I was a scuba diver instructor in the Galapagos for almost 2 years, but that was a long time ago and has nothing to do with reality. I think that the only story that I have from reality is actually this morning. I was sitting for breakfast with my 4-year-old, and she was explaining both to me and to her mom about the concept of kindness. And when she gave examples, she said that daddy is the kindest and mommy is not so much. So that's my story.
Oh, kids say the darndest things. I'm now have like everything that my 5 and 7-year-olds have said to me recently, like running through my head. I'm sure we could have a whole like session on things kids say and revenue operations, but we'll save that maybe for our next panel. And so while I am kind of getting up, I'll pull up some slides that we'll use as a backdrop here, but maybe Ito, I want to turn it over to you first to talk about this whole notion of again, building, kind of breaking through silos, building collaboration. What, I guess why was, this, call it a passionate, kind of topic for yours? And what are the things that you think kind of, I don't know, go into this whole silo busting thing, especially for people in RevOps, as we think about, again, how to execute on, things like technology, our go-to-market tech stack, our process, right? We think about how to get things done. So, what does that mean when it comes to, again, how do you get things done around breaking silos and building collaboration?
So the main reason why I think it's very important for RevOps, collaboration is something that is important for everyone. But if you're looking at a company from 100,000 feet, really you're seeing RevOps kind of like in the middle. They're in between management and systems and every other team that the company has. And RevOps also, by definition, are responsible for maintaining or at least taking care of a couple of black boxes within the organization that create these kind of like silos. What's happening in our CRM, what's happening in other systems. And the level of alignment between RevOps and management, RevOps and other teams is something that I've seen many times either make or break a company, and I've been on both ends of this story actually.
Yeah, and so we've got you all kind of put together this framework here in terms of how we can think about collaborating. And I think I looked at this and it makes makes tons of sense. You kind of have these three different areas of collaboration, right? Where you need to like within your team, right? Within your RevOps team, even if that only includes maybe one other person, or I don't know, if you're a team of one, then you're collaborating with the multiple personalities, I guess, that you have. But you have to collaborate across across your RevOps team function. Cross functionally, you just mentioned it, right? Marketing, sales, post sales, lots of different kind of teams / functions that you need to essentially spread yourself across. And then whether it's executive or kind of company leadership, or even leadership within some of those kind of varying teams, there's, again, I think different ways, different strategies, different things that work and don't work in terms of how you can collaborate with the leadership team at your company. And so, I guess I'm maybe Ido, start with you and then can go on to Andy and Molly. But, did I don't know, did I describe that right? I guess that was what I thought of when I kind of looked at the framework that you laid out here. But anything you want to add to that?
I think just one thing that Andy told me, I think I said it a week ago, is that, cross-functional with RevOps is so different. If you're talking about the finance team versus the R&D team, that each one of them, we can have a webinar just for each one of these teams. But in the end, the concept of collaboration and understanding your position and what is expected from you as RevOps, when these teams are looking at you from the outside, that's a big outcome of this webinar for me, at least.
Yeah. Andy, what's your reaction to this, I guess, kind of framework? I mean, you've seen this at a lot of different companies, right? From, you've helped scale companies from 10 million to 100 million. I think you've worked on the post-IPO side as well. Are there, is this one of those things that holds true across companies of all stages, all types, or is it more earlier stage, mid-market, late stage? Does it depend?
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental different types of organizations you need to collaborate with are there. I think RevOps is the most cross-function department, I believe, because it's cutting across the revenue org. It also has to integrate with IT, with finance, in theory with product, if you want to be able to get the product data, with the data teams as well too. So RevOps is a cross-functional role. Like if you're not ready for that, don't lead it. You can be like the number two and have a lot of that air cover. I guess if you look at this chart here, I'd say I'll leave within team alone for a second, but with leadership, I care deeply about how wired I am and if I can manage up to that like CEO / CRO that I work with. So I've kind of found that I write, so I'll just drop it in here, but I've written like my user manual. And I think that actually works well for leadership and within team. Within team, it's like I find I have idiosyncrasies and my team does. And the more we can understand them, the less time we spend figuring each other out. With leaders, like I just fundamentally need to have a leader that I can manage up to. I've worked with ones that I can and ones that I can't. I spend most of my time thinking about the cross-functional side, which we can talk about as well, but that's the harder one, right? Like those are people that don't report to you or don't manage you and don't have to have a perfect relationship with you. And so those are the ones that I probably spend the most time banging my head against a wall on.
Yeah, and to chime in with like the cross-functional, right? When we think about the purpose of RevOps in an organization, and sorry to interrupt you if you were still working through a thought there, Andy, it's, you know, our role is to be business partners cross-functionally and support those different functions. And so there's not a one size fits all of like what, you know, collaboration looks like across these different pieces. And there has to be this level of, you know, flexibility and coordination and alignment on how you define that to get that right working cadence. So as you work between marketing and sales, it's not going to be necessarily the same playbook, the same outcomes.
Yeah. And actually, we got a question. It's a good segue into this first topic on working with leadership around, again, I'm sure we've all been in companies that have had a variety of different planning cycles or goal setting, I'll say like strategies or ways, or whether it's like OKRs, MBOs, whatever it might be. I guess, how have you all ever had, call it like OKRs or specific initiatives or directives laid out to you to be like, hey, one of your jobs this quarter, this year, in this cycle is to break down silos, or, you know, break down those barriers across these teams? That's question number one. And then if you have had any of those directives, whether directly or maybe loosely, how do you measure them? Like, how do you measure success? And again, we might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but I'm just curious, like, have you ever had those specifically put on your plate as very specific directives? And then two, if so, how have you measured outcomes around success or non-success there?
Couple things on that one. One is like, I've never been in a company where OKRs have worked. Everyone reads the articles and thinks how cool they are, but they're really hard to put into practice, especially layered. Two is, I don't think any executive is ever going to put a goal for you to break down cross-functional silos. That is a way to achieve the goals. They aren't thinking about that. That's what RevOps is thinking about. I'd say three, like RevOps one, right, is telling the executives what we need to focus on rather than waiting for them to tell you. So I guess the firm answer is no. That's never been on my plate, but it's a core part of my role.
Mm-hmm. When I think about, you know, the points of friction that would cause like the recognition of silos, right? Because ultimately what I hear when I see that question is like, we recognize that there are silos or something breaking in our process where we're not collaborating. Like that's where alignment comes into place. It's the same concept like when I think about the friction between sales and marketing and the finger pointing, right? If you don't have shared goals and, you know, the same desired outcomes, you're not forced to work together to get there. So I would look at that as like stepping back and like, what are our goals? What are we trying to accomplish? And where is it not working properly? And how do we need to then address that root cause? And things that I think about, you know, specifically around like the cross-functional coordination is like, do we have the right standard operating procedures and the RACI documentation and like the clear accountabilities that ultimately should drive collaboration and coordination? And without having those proper expectations set up front, like it's going to be a world of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt, not always, we have Ben, our RevOps, is on the line. So I used to feel a lot of frustration in the past when it came to my relationship with RevOps around the clarity and alignment of the business processes, where I felt that I'm speaking in one language and then I'm hearing from sales about this other terminology that they're using. And when I'm confronting it with the RevOps, there's like the truth is somewhere in between because it's implemented in a different way. Another area of friction was always around timeline, where it was very hard for me to understand. And I think that it's because of these silos, it was very hard for me to understand why some changes or something that I'm asking for are taking 3 months instead of 2 days. And again, that's really the outcome of silos and not having alignment, is the fact that you have different set of expectations. These would be my two main challenges as management with RevOps.
I would say maybe on that one, the thing that I coach so many RevOps folks that are like at the director level and just struggling and sinking and struggling to like deliver things on time is you have to force trade-offs. I've watched so many times where RevOps says, oh, cool, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And then you're going to get in trouble. Instead, what's better is, great, congratulations, you want that. It's 7th on the list. Here are the 6 priorities above it. If we disagree on the prioritization, let's talk. Otherwise, I'm going to go attack what's on the top of my list. And I see mature strategic RevOps leaders able to do that. And I talk to so many people who are just sinking if they can't do that. So I'll drop in an article I wrote on it, but it's like, if you can't force trade-offs, like Ido, you're probably sitting there saying, God damn it, why isn't that thing done? But RevOps is probably working on 4 other things at the same time. And if they could just come to you and say that, of like, Ido, yeah, I think it's actually 3rd on the list, and you might disagree and you can have that debate. So that's been a big aha for me. My old boss, I won't name which company, but he basically said RevOps never gets another hire unless the business gives it to them. And so very quickly, I started to realize I needed to force these people to realize that our resources were finite. And like the next quarter, I got 4 heads, right? People just start handing them. So I think a lot of RevOps people obsess over like, I don't have enough resources. That's never the right answer. The right answer is, I need to force trade-offs better. And then you'll get the resources.
Yeah. What are you going to get done with the resources you have? And what could you get done if you had more resources, right?
Yep. Well, no, never. Yeah, I guess you're right. If you're like, hey, and it's 7th on the list, but and the CEO says I need to accelerate that, that's one way.
Yes.
If you can't prioritize, right? Like that's the big thing. And to Andy's point, for the last 3 companies that I've ran revenue operations at, I have a spreadsheet, right? Because it's easy to access, easy to manage with my running list. And so I can quickly pull it up in a meeting and say what doesn't get done, right? I hear you say this is a priority based on our steering and the decisions we've made across leadership. If you want to change this, what doesn't get done? And the thing that I would caveat on there, we all know, if we're using Jira or whatever system we're using to manage our tasks, there's hundreds of tasks that need to be done. Be really mindful of like how you're grouping and bucketing those things, because the CEO doesn't want to sit and say, oh, you need to build this field here, right? Like make them your bigger strategic priorities, but know what goes into actually achieving them from like a time and energy and effort and resource standpoint too. So you can properly scope and align that this is, 2 weeks worth of work or this is 6 weeks.
Totally agree with you on that, Molly. Like, you have to communicate in a way your stakeholders can understand. Like I have you might have a project board, but I have like a 1-page Google slide that's like, here's what we're working on. And you just manually update it because that's the level at which executive stakeholders are going to digest.
Yeah. And I guess I'm curious, for you, right, we had on here working with leadership, and I know Andy and Molly have talked about, kind of the different projects that might be on the RevOps plate, prioritization or appropriate prioritization and communication of those, and communication at the right level, right? You don't need to pull up 100 subtasks that roll up to a parent item to get your point across when interacting with leadership. But you also had on this slide of, how to get your boss to read your mind. And so I'm curious on kind of perspective there and what you were getting at with that, or what you're thinking on that.
So I think that the answer to that is that you can't get your boss to read your mind, nor should you try to get him to read your mind. You should really over communicate as RevOps and make it very clear what you're working on. And again, the priorities and your resources. I think that a lot of the challenges of RevOps is also in the way that they communicate the information that they're responsible for, to communicate to management. Again, going back to the business processes, like what's really happening. That's it's not an easy task. And if I'm looking at at my time at Wix. So Wix was running kind of like these two parallel processes. One was for online acquisition and the other one was for its go-to-market teams. And getting visibility into what's happening with the online processes was something that is just industry standard, but getting visibility into what's happening with its sales processes, customer success processes was just like every time there was a request from the CRO or from the CEO to understand the process of how do we sell to e-commerce agencies, and the RevOps team needed to close itself for 3 days in building a presentation that would make sense. So that's, I mean, just finding the right mediums and the right kind of way to constantly communicate that's been a real challenge, and also something that we're very focused on at Sweep. In general, there's like so many similarities between what a product manager is doing and what RevOps are doing, right? Product manager needs to manage roadmap and need to manage the priorities, and RevOps are kind of like doing the same. But for a product manager, it's so much easier to just share visually what he's working on versus what a RevOps team is doing, where you kind of like need to do a lot of hand waving, to explain what is really going on under the hood.
I totally agree with Ito on all of that. I'd say it's to the point early on of like, it's never your boss's job to read your mind. I think one of the big unlocks for me was how to manage up. I'll drop an article in on it, but I've found that there are bosses that are easy to manage up to, and it's not hard, right? Like, you fundamentally just need them to like pay attention and give you the right air cover 5 to 6 times a year, and otherwise trust you, and then also understand data. But I teach a lot of the people that work for me how to manage up to me. And then I spend a lot of time thinking about how do I manage up to my boss? Because there are going to be problems within RevOps that you cannot solve with your own relationships, like friction with finance, or finance is saying one thing, you're saying something different, or security is a roadblock for a specific tool, or whatever it is. And so I think as RevOps to succeed cross-functionally, you need to be able to wield that like exec level, board level influence as well too. And a large portion of success there is managing up.
Absolutely. To piggyback on that, there's a lot of things you don't have the authority to solve, right? Within RevOps. And one of the things that I did at Deal when I was running revenue operations there that feels very tactical, but I think was so important based on how quickly we were growing and how we needed to communicate, is I did a traffic light update every week to the CEO and the CRO. That was, here's the green, here's the yellow, and here's the red. And it was, tried not to put too many bullets in there, but giving them an update on where the team was, what things were on track, what were accomplished, where we were potentially at risk, and where we were totally blocked and I needed their support, whether that was needing them to jump in with, finance for budget approval on something. I was blocked with hiring and wasn't getting as much TA support, but really calling those, very critical things out that like I needed them to help drive with me because I was blocked, help them action something really clearly. And they also set the expectation that every Friday they're getting this update from me. And it's very clear, consistent, and like gives them direction on what the team is doing or where we need additional support.
I totally agree with you on that traffic light. I literally had the same concept. I had it in like 5 buckets. So it was very consistent, but it was like systems, data, stakeholders, capacity, and enablement. And if I didn't have those 5 things in like good enough state, they were very clear that I couldn't execute. So like, I love that concept, Molly. It was like, they just saw the slide and they were like, oh, I know where I need to go fix for you.
Yep. Yeah. And as someone who, like for myself, as someone who's currently CEO, has been a CEO, has also worked for a bunch of CEOs and executives in my days, like as you all were talking, I was thinking of like the one thing that I either ask people on my team about or that I've been asked about a lot, which is status updates, right? It's like, oh, what's going on here? Oh, what's going on with that thing, right? So to your point before about how to get your boss to read your mind, the answer is they can't and they never will. And to the point on over communication, I can't remember, Molly, if that was you or who raised that, but like that is one guaranteed way to make sure that they're updated, informed, right? Send the Friday kind of status email that breaks things down into green, yellow, red, or the 5 buckets like Andy described, right? Tell them what's going on with all the things that you're working on, because one, now they don't have to ask, and two, if they ever get asked from the board, other people on their team, if they just want to know what's going on, they have the answer. That is one great way to foster collaboration with your leadership team that's guaranteed to work. And then go ahead, Andy.
I was just gonna say, I don't think leadership teams read those emails, though, is the only thing I would say. I think you got to look them in the eye and you got to say it in this, like in those like one-on-ones, and when you're in the leadership team meetings. I'm a little cynical, which is I would still send those emails, but I actually don't think we track the view stats and the read stats on that, and like the CEO logged in to that Google Doc once, like the entire time, right?
Yeah. Well, that was actually going to be my next question, was on, because we talked about some of the specifics of what you can do, right? So we talked about over communicating, we talked about appropriately prioritizing and sharing that message, and we talked a little bit about some specifics that you can do, right? Whether it's a 1-page slide like you have, Andy, whether it's a green, yellow, red kind of weekly email like you had, Molly. So I was going to ask about like cadence or kind of operating rhythm when it comes to, again, working, collaborating with your leadership team. I mean, you just brought it up, Andy, like, hey, messages are, call it, best received in person or face to face. So what sort of, I'll say, like, cadence or rhythm have you seen work well in the past in collaborating, working with leadership team? Is it making sure you've got a weekly meeting on the calendar? Is it sending weekly email updates? Like, what are some of those specific rhythm type things that people could do to, again, work better with their own leadership team?
One thing, go ahead, Andy.
Please.
Well, one thing I wanted to jump in on here is, like, we talk about over communication with leadership, which I believe is really important, but I think you have to be mindful on like the purposefulness of your communication too, because again, it's not to say boy who cried wolf and use that analogy, but if you're perpetually pinging and communicating like things, like you're not going to get the attention that they need when you really need the support. So be really mindful of how you're communicating, especially when you're communicating up to, the C-level, that it's very, precise and outcome focused of what you need versus, no one wants to read an 8-page document, give them the TLDR and provide additional details if needed. So I do want to like caveat, like over communicating is not keep pinging, and it's being consistent, concise, and like very purposeful in what you're sending. In terms of cadence, I'll just jump into this. One of the things that I do with my team is we build an operating like model, right? We look at like what our meeting cadences are across departments, what our roles are within those different situations, what do we need to bring to the table, and have like a very clear, like, this is our operating cadence as a team. Here's how we work cross-functionally. Do we have the right touch points across all these different areas? And are we using the time that we've already decided on purposefully with the right outcome approaches to help really mitigate, the ad hoc, like, let's get on a call kind of things. Like, no, we have purposeful time every other week. This is what we use it for. Here's how you prep for it. This is what you can expect from me. So I do think that's one thing, like, as you think about, looking at your calendar as a RevOps professional, like, what are your status, standing meetings versus like, what are your ad hocs? And is there a way to actually become more purposeful in your time and how you stack those? And then in terms of the communication, like upward with leadership, I think it's going to depend on the business and how the business operates. But I do think at least once a week, you should have some written level of status update. I know Andy said people don't read them. Work on getting a cadence that they acknowledge that they've read them, right? Slack, giving a thumbs up. Like, I can assure you, if you're, every time I pinged the CEO or CRO with something I needed, like, they responded back. So if it's a culture that you have that they do that, great. Otherwise, make sure in your one-on-ones that you're setting the expectation of like acknowledgement and taking notes and like follow through of like, what's the next action that you're going to take. So there's a level of accountability.
Agree with all that. My teams generally run the metrics cadences for all the functions. So we're not as much like, here, go look at all the projects we're working on. We're focusing on bringing the entire company through the metrics cadences, and we're running that like discussion around those numbers. And we slip in a slide at the end with like, here's where the projects are. And so people will listen. I do send it, but I don't count on people seeing it there. I think I always ask all the people that work for me, which is like, did you get invited to the marketing offsite? Were you invited to the CS offsite? Were you at the support offsite? If you weren't, they don't see you as strategic and all of it, and you are a tactical RevOps function. And so that's like the measure for me.
You're not a business partner.
You're not a business partner.
Yep. And yeah, and on the, I guess it leads into kind of the next kind of bucket of collaboration that we were kind of getting at a little bit on kind of how to collaborate cross-functionally across those different teams and department. And actually one thing, we have a question on this that I want to kind of pose to the panel to get us started on this first, because we were talking about kind of the idea of resource constraint earlier. And so Daniel asked, under the constraint of limited RevOps resources, how do you best negotiate with your team, sales, marketing, customer success, that support your RevOps priorities and scopes? How do you best negotiate or kind of get the budget, right? How do you go after the resources that you need and succeed in doing
Force
that?
trade-offs.
This comes down to steering, right? So like, you shouldn't be in a situation where you're trying to pick between like marketing, sales, and CS, right? Like, you should be sitting and cross-functionally across go-to-market steering and building that alignment so that, we know as a company, these are initiatives, this is what needs to go into them, and here's the support we need, which should drive the trade-offs and the prioritization. Like, realistically, you shouldn't have that conflict if you're working towards the same goals.
Alignment of to building on Molly's point, like alignment on targets. Like, marketing shouldn't be working on leads and sales working on this. You should figure out what's that line. It tends to be like pipeline, for example, which is like qualified pipeline. And if marketing and sales are working towards different goals, they're probably going to be pulling you in different directions. But if you can get those things aligned cross-functionally, that's when you really won.
So how do you I guess the question though, like, so is how do you because I've been, when I was leading BizOps and RevOps before, one of the things that I did was moved away from having functional specific meetings of like, hey, sales leader, let's review the sales projects. Hey, marketing leader, let's review the marketing stuff. I moved everybody into one meeting to, again, call it force those trade-offs, or be like, hey, here's all the stuff we've got going on. Like, these are the things for the business that are most important. But naturally, the sales leader is going to think that the sales things are going to be the most important, and marketing is going to think that their items are most important. And so how do you handle it in those, call it those meetings where you're trying to force those trade-offs, but you can't get people to get there? Like, what do you do? Does that mean you're doing it wrong, I guess?
Mine's pretty simple. I think our RevOps job is to put the best prioritization on we can for the business. We have to be thinking about the business, not a specific function. And then I'm always like, you need to take it to the CEO, CRO, and like, we can replan. Done. Generally what they'll do is they generally aren't questioning it. Like, I had head of account management. He was always beating on my team. And finally I was like, okay, here are your priorities. They're like 8th, 9th, and 10th. Here's what's above it. Do you disagree? If you do, let's go talk to the CRO. I have no pride in this. I'm just making the best decisions I can. He's like, 2 months later, he gave me a headcount. Right. So like, that's how it works. If you can force people to make the right decisions and recognize that you're making the right decisions for the business, and then they still are falling on the bottom of the thing, they're going to advocate for you. And obviously when he gave me that headcount, I kind of had to reserve like 2/3 of it for his stuff.
Yeah, you didn't allocate that person to all things not account management.
Yeah, there's a little bit of give it to him for a couple of quarters.
RevOps also play a role in enforcing the same level of communication from other teams, right? If you've created some form of efficient communication between you and management, then you need to demand the same level of communication also from other teams. So if you're able to communicate with numbers and with prioritization and with defining what is the impact of each one of the decisions, you need to make sure that whatever requirements that are being given to you are translated or are communicated in the same way. So it will be apples to apples, and that people will have like some common ground in order to understand how decisions are made.
I would love it if they did, Ido. Oftentimes, not everyone's quite as fluent in data. Like I'm very used to certain stakeholders are really good at leveraging data. Other stakeholders may not be so good. And, a large part of my job was every time you get a new stakeholder in the business, you kind of hug them, figure out, are they savvy and can you kind of let them go to your team? Or do you have to spend a lot of time hand holding and keeping a closer eye on them? So I would love it if everyone communicated like we do, but I kind of assume, it's like, assume it's what they hear rather than what you say.
You can set some level of expectations. It's important, right? I mean, in the end, like we have, I shared this document that is how to write like an Amazonian. And one of the things that I really like there is that every question can be answered with a yes, no, a number, or I don't know. Right. So like if every question that you're being asked, I mean, it's your answer starts with that, it immediately puts you in a better place.
I
So
do
there are
think
always like techniques.
you are clearly a process-oriented guy. Like I wasn't joking about Ido's the dream CEO. CEOs and are different, right? Like there are some that I had one that just didn't get numbers and was much more visionary. And you're a process-oriented, and I think there are plenty that are not. And then that's either you have to decide, like, do you not work for those people or do you find the right workarounds and agreements? But I wish everyone ticked like you did, buddy.
I laugh because I'm like, I feel like the tagline for revenue operations is it depends. And that's usually the first answer. So if we could get that one added to the list, I'm sure that would be the answer to every question.
Yeah. But I do, but I guess to Ito's point, I like, and I guess I have a different of opinion on OKRs from Andy because we're big proponents of OKRs at RevOps Co-op. But the main thing that I like about that is, and what Ito said is, I always try to tie the specific either projects or tactics, things that we're doing with like, well, what's the outcome that we're trying to influence here, right? So, if you are going cross-functionally across, marketing, sales, success, and you're trying to figure out like, hey, what's going to have the biggest impact on, say revenue, right? That like when you put it down to, again, a number or a piece of data, and you can support your thinking and how you got there, that can be one framework for how you can prioritize or communicate things. And then again, to Andy's point, I think the main thing there is like, have a willingness to either like have your mind changed or to to not like have a firm like stake in the ground, right? Like be open to hear what other people think, and don't be afraid to go up to the CEO, the CRO, like you said, and like have a discussion if people feel strongly about one way or the other. I think that's a great way to prove to all your leaders across any function in the go-to-market team that you're working with that you are in fact on the same team, right? Like you want what's best. And yeah, like if a conversation with the CEO or CRO is a thing that needs to happen in order to reprioritize thing, and that's what's best for the business, then like heck yeah, like let's go do that, right? But yeah, not everyone will tick like that as we've talked about already. So all right, well, anything, I guess, before we move on to the kind of the third kind of bucket, anything else from y'all on this whole notion of, again, collaborating kind of cross-functionally across teams on the go-to-market side?
I have a question. Do you think that there's like one team that is more critical for RevOps, or is it totally depends on the personas?
It depends upon the org structure of the company. I actually posted earlier, like all the different functions. Like sometimes you may have enablement in, sometimes you may have out. Like sometimes, like at Box, IT was like my best buddies and partners. At Culture Amp, it was a little bit more difficult because they happen to be in Australia. BizOps is different in every single company. Sometimes they're all in your hair. Other times they're a strategic function for the CEO. Data teams, maybe they are underneath you. Maybe they are, maybe they're like trying to tell the world of numbers in a slightly different way, and you're driving you nuts. So like it totally depends on, and finance, same thing. Either you're like deeply aligned or you're like friction. And so like I just think you're gonna have to figure it out and then solve those problems.
Yeah. So we've heard so I guess some of the themes I've heard, at least so far, across these kind of first two categories are I'll say transparency, right? Like be open about either the things that you're currently working on, the metrics or data points that you're trying to impact, and how you're prioritizing things, right? So be transparent, whether that's making sure that there's a public Jira board, a public sheet, a weekly email that you send, something, right? Be open. And then I'll say find the right level of, I think, over communication is probably a second piece that I heard, right? So communicate at the right cadence, at the right level, with the right people, which again is probably somewhat based on the culture of your specific company. And then also just prioritize and kind of force trade-offs, ultimately doing what's best for the business, kind of in mind. And so as we kind of take those things and look at now working within your own team, right? Which again, this might be whether you're working on a small RevOps team, maybe you got one colleague, or maybe you've got 10, 20, 50, 100 different folks on your RevOps squad. How do you keep everyone on the same page? How do you drive alignment? What's the same, but especially like what's different about collaborating within your RevOps team that may be there or maybe not there when we think about collaborating with leadership and collaborating cross-functionally, like we've already talked about?
Clarity.
Yeah, the thing.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
go
Mark,
ahead. No, go ahead.
clarity of prioritization. Like your team should not be working on 12 things. Like I look at it as like when we were doing the migration from leads to leads/contacts to just contacts, like everybody in our team was clear they all played a role, right? The marketing team, the CS team, the thing. And so I tend to try to bring the team towards the priorities and the goals. Like we would have team meetings once a week and we'd always be very clear, and a lot of like working out loud, sharing what you're working on. So yeah, it's just clarity of purpose and alignment is really all I focus on.
Yeah, I run a weekly meeting, and I think one of the biggest benefits of that is understanding like risk assessment too, right? So like where there might be points of friction or places that we haven't identified that there could be a risk to either meeting a deadline or something we didn't think about because of how we're communicating with each other. So we use that time to be a little bit more tactical, make sure we're really problem solving and have the right approach there. Additionally, making sure as a leader, you're taking that tops down communication and providing that transparency. A lot of times, especially when I was in more of like tactical roles in RevOps, it's like, I don't understand why this decision was made or what this actually means. I was just told to go do something, right? But when your team actually understands the why behind what they're doing, they're more equipped to ask the better questions and get the better outcomes because they can see more of the holistic vision versus just go build this, right? Oh, we're going from leads to contacts. And if I just said, okay, great, and didn't actually probe on that, what would I miss by not doing that? So use those forums to really create that space for transparency from the strategic direction, but also make sure you're giving the forum for more of the tacticals and the whys that maybe you haven't thought of.
I like that. I also believe that it's not my job as a leader to tell them what to do. I try to train my team to manage up. So like I got to this point at Culture Amp where I was there to provide air cover for them and to guide them on if it was a good decision or not versus ideate. Like the leads to contacts didn't come from me. It came from my team, which said like, we need to solve this problem. And then we obviously that's not something that any executive cares about, right? So we had to figure out like how do we slip that in at the right time and make sure we're driving like there's kind of there's like change that will drive business metrics, Matt, that you talked about, but there's also change that's the tech debt that you've got in the systems as well too. And so I think it actually can be very fulfilling when the teams are telling you what they want to do. And ideally they're aligned with their stakeholders on it too. And so that one also, like the head of marketing was very aligned on the need to do that problem as well. And so it made it easy for us to get it through.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
One example of something much more tactical. I mean, I remember maybe 7 or 8 years ago seeing for the first time the impact that Figma had over design teams in terms of them sharing what is actually going on and not just closed versions, and being able to share the work and what's like actually happening and the way that it created conversations within the company on the design process and being able to just react to it in real time. I think that a lot of the systems that RevOps are working on are also going in that direction, into like having collaborative functionality into it. It's definitely something that we kind of like put it on our flag at Sweep in terms of doing it for Salesforce, but I think that it also happens to other systems, and just being able to kind of like share the reality in an asynchronous way, without any buffers, without any need for translation, just in a very clear way that allows people to be just on the same, leveling the playing field for everyone. That's also a big thing.
Yeah. And yeah, one of the things that I think you were hitting on too, Molly, earlier that came to mind was well, and you as well, Andy, is like, I think being transparent about, either like why the work that you're doing is being done or the impact that it's having, I think is key, right? Like, at least, for us, I mean, at RevOps Co-op, like, we're a small team, but we share financials, revenue number, impact of stuff that we're working on, right? Like across, like everyone, right? Just because I want everyone to know, like, hey, this is why these things are important for us on this particular quarter. And then the flip side is, like, I always ask everyone on the team, and currently and in prior organizations as well, is like, I think you brought it up, Molly, on like the risk, like when you're working with your team, like, you want to identify problems early, right? Like, I never want to be surprised when something is going wrong, and I never want to hear about it through someone other than the person who's responsible, right? Or like who's owning that particular initiative or project. And so I think that's the other thing is, like, as you're kind of working across your team, we talked about some of those things to maybe avoid when you're interacting with your leadership team or maybe cross-functionally. But amongst your peers, when you're working within your RevOps crew, like, if you see something that is a cause for concern, like, raise that, right? Like, you should be identifying those things early, and not assuming that someone else is going to see them, or assuming that someone else has seen them and that it's just not a problem, right? If something is off, say it now, because that's going to enable all those other collaboration pieces that we talked about, right? Communication up to leadership, communication across your team, like identifying those things up front. That's going to build trust. That's going to go a very long ways to help you just collaborate and have better relationships across the board.
Yeah, a couple other thoughts on this is, like, I think we did a lot of cross education. So two areas we specifically did. One is we would have one person on the team every week teach something about something else they're working. So we try to do a lot of cross pollination. I guess 1B would be we did a lot of swaps, right? Like, I had my head of MOPS end up running sales ops because he was so talented, and we were just swapping people around. And then I would also tried to monthly, it ended up being about every 6 weeks, I would bring in a RevOps team from another company, and we would just sit and mind share across. And I think the teams love that. So I really try to do that, like, cross mentality where people aren't just thinking about their silo, but thinking across their own, even within our own team. It made people a lot more sympathetic, and it made things more cross-functional.
I love the bringing in the other RevOps team. I'm going to definitely steal that.
We had so much fun. We brought in like 5 RevOps teams from public companies. We would basically say, what's the topic we want to geek out on? I'd reach out to a friend, Molly, and then we would do that. That just, it really invigorates the teams as well too, because RevOps can be a fairly internal role. And I think you and I both have like networks outside of our companies. And a lot of people question, like, why do we post online? Why do we talk? And a big portion for me was I want to bring those insights back.
We need to learn.
Yeah.
That's why we talk.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Andy, is like, we talked about silo busting, right? And I think we all were kind of thinking of this like, oh, like, marketing, sales, success, like, hey, like, don't forget, like, there's a RevOps silo as well. Like, are you going to go and talk to another RevOps team within your company? Like, the answer is no. And so, I mean, that's why places like RevOps Co-op exist, communities exist. That's why you should leverage your networks. Doing things to go outside of what you're doing within RevOps at your company is a great way to break down those silos that might exist in your own thinking. So that's a great point. Like, don't think it like, because you're tasked with, I'll say, like, maybe solving this across your go-to-market team, don't think that it doesn't apply to you or your squad as well. And then yeah, I think you brought up a good point on the technology side. I kind of looked at, I mean, like the Sweep product that you all are doing, what you're doing with kind of Salesforce as kind of the equivalent of like what Figma and stuff was doing with design. But is there anything more you want to add on that in terms of like things you're seeing within kind of products and how folks can collaborate across the like the technology or tooling? Because I think like Salesforce administration is a great example of like, people don't see the way it gets done or even like what it necessarily looks like under the hood. But there's a lot there. And you mentioned approaching RevOps from kind of this product management, kind of standpoint. So yeah, anything to add on those topics?
So I think there are so many different frameworks to keep track of prioritization and like the company's roadmap. I think that for me, if we're looking now at the kind of engagement that we're seeing at Sweep between RevOps and other teams, and RevOps and management, just on that, visual canvas that shows them the processes, it really changes the way that these companies are working. Instead of having some Google Slides with your process, you can just discuss it with your CEO and tell him, here's what's actually happening. And it's just something that's, we kind of like imagined that it would make an impact, but I don't think that any of us really anticipated what would be the level of change that it can create internally.
And just a shout out to Ido on that. Like, Molly, I'd be curious to you, but I've always had like the lucid chart with how our things connect, right? But it's still a black box to people of how to get in there. And so I remember when I first saw the demo on Sweep, it's very exciting to think of how it can take what is a black box for just the people that are running Salesforce and extend it out to the ops team and then to the management and to the stakeholders. So, I think it's really exciting what you folks are doing. Molly, do you have the lucid chart at every company you've been at?
I have the lucid chart, and the thing that I appreciate about Sweep, right, is like data is a byproduct of process. And so when you think about, as you're defining your process and illustrating your process, you're ultimately doing this to drive efficiency, to drive output of data, and being able to see that directly, like process and output within a single visual that's not a tons of entity diagrams with text boxes that are impossible to keep up to date as things change, is like so compelling and such an efficiency gain for an ops organization to know, this data is generated at this stage. Here's how it happens. This is the criteria, and moving that forward.
I think that it's a matter of time until you'll have this level of collaboration also with your finance systems. And, maybe, Jira is already doing that to some extent, that's collaborative by definition. But I'm guessing that I'm seeing it from the product management side, that there are a lot of new companies that are kind of building a product around the frameworks of how to manage product. And the same can be applied also to RevOps, to the business side of RevOps.
Yeah. And I think, more and more tools are moving in that direction. But I think the thing that I liked about like the technology that powers Sweep is that you're kind of tying the process, the technology to the way that people go to market, right? And you're allowing everyone to do it in a way that call it like common language, right? Everyone knows, like when they look at a visual like that, everyone kind of knows what they're looking at. And so I think again, that kind of ties a bunch across all the topics we talked about already today, is like understanding. I mean, Andy brought it up at the beginning, like what's your own user manual? How do you work best with other people? When new stakeholders come in, understand what makes them tick, how they think. When you're working with your CEO, are they data literate, process oriented folks like Ido, or are they like more the people who like have never looked at a number or spreadsheet in their entire life, and they just want to think about all the amazing visionary things that they can do. Understanding the common language that you can use to kind of communicate across these teams, across these functions within your own team, across the leadership team, I think is critical. And yeah, when you can get tools that help you do that in a very easy way, like +1 in the win column, I think, for you. And I guess last thing I'll mention, or I guess we got 3 minutes left, so want to kind of maybe go around the horn and just see if anyone has any kind of parting thoughts on the topic today. We talked about silo busting, collaborating across your leadership team, collaborating with your leadership team at your business across functions like marketing, sales, customer success, and then also within your own RevOps team, whether it's a team of 2 or a team of 22. And so, maybe Molly, we'll start with you. Like, any last kind of thoughts that we maybe didn't bring up, or anything you just want to reiterate for folks as we kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we think about collaboration, like really think about accountability as a component of that, because it is so important that there is a level of accountability and communication that ties into collaboration. You're not just going to wake up and say, hey, we're going to collaborate and it's going to be sunshine and rainbows. There has to be clear expectations and accountabilities to hold things forward. So
Yep. Everything should have an owner. One owner. You brought up the RACI matrix before too, which actually, what does RACI stand for?
What is it? Responsible, accountable, informed, collaborative.
Yeah,
collaborator, informed.
Yeah.
I use DAISY, but it's the same basic thing. Yeah, it's a great model.
Yeah.
And you don't need to spend days putting like a formal together, but I would recommend when you're kicking off a project at the top of whatever brief, you've got it very clearly outlined.
Molly, you and I tick very similarly. I literally create a Google Doc for every new project with the DAISY on it. It's so fun.
Yeah, and it's just sets expectations up front.
And it also makes people know that, like, hey, you're included. We thought of you.
Yeah. No one wants to feel left out, which again is why, like, if you can put their name down on a page, or if you can CC them on an email, send them that status update, right? Like that stuff sounds so silly. Like, trust me, it goes a long ways.
Yes.
I laugh because sometimes I'm like, I would prefer to be left out of some things, but
yeah, I think
apparently I'm responsible for them though.
Matt, you really love emails, man. I having spent time at an email company, I like less of them, but I'm with you.
Yep.
By the way, one of the things that I really like about both the RACI and prioritization and the entire effective communication framework is just the fact that all of them are things that you can learn and get better at. Like, you don't need to have like some naturally born talent or like some charisma. You don't need anything for that. Like, you can really just get better at that and master it and be better than anyone who just goes into the room and thinks that he's very good at it without practicing.
Yeah.
Matt, you asked about the future vision. I want to leave one thing is, how do we all collaborate when we're all working in different data models? I fundamentally believe that data will rewire GTM. I've got that tongue-in-cheek article, which is your next CRM is your data warehouse. I think that's another reason I like Sweep, because I think it's part of that ability to start to, it doesn't all have to be Salesforce. I think it's like there's Salesforce, there's HubSpot, but the lead object is fundamentally different in the two, is just one of many examples of how our data models are different. And then even start to think about how product data maps into the go-to-market side. Like, it's a mess and we're all talking about different data models. So that's how I think collaboration gets easier over time.
We're all making decisions off of different data models, which makes it even more fun.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, we're about 1 minute past, so I'm going to say thank you to all the attendees. Thank you to all the panelists as well, Molly, Andy, Ido. It's been awesome as always. And so, yeah, thank you everybody for attending. I'll let y'all run. I'll see you on the flip side, and keep an eye out for more of these from us that we'll be doing along with our partner Sweep. So I'll see y'all. Take care.
Bye.